Hello, trading has closed on the 4th of December 2024. As always, we'll begin with our disclaimer, go over our calls, make our predictions. It's my trading plan for Thursday, the 5th of December 2024. It's my plan for tomorrow. I can change my plan. My plan can be completely wrong. Any trade you make should be made at your own risk. I use a number of systems, one of which is the MEJT system. It gives targets. It doesn't say anything about the entry. Today we look for the pattern with the early high, which is this. Tomorrow should have the early low. Pattern tends to give a rally day with a high in the final hour, which it did. For a couple of weeks we were looking for a high in this area. We never got confirmation. We said yesterday the odds had increased. We were going higher instead of lower. And that all we needed to do is to give a gap over recent highs. That's what happened. This is what we said. Tomorrow has the early low. Well, that's a valid break. It still needs confirmation. Confirmation is trading past today's close. It might happen, but it's not a lock because we have lower targets. We have a target of about 6,074.93. If we don't gap up smartly tomorrow, that's my call. Ultimately, we should see 6,061.05, undercutting today's low. An ultimate target has no time limit. It doesn't have to print tomorrow, but usually you don't have to wait long. It implies we're going to undercut this low. You don't have to go lower, but it wouldn't surprise me if we did and filled the gap. I get about 150 of these ultimate targets a year. System's 22 and a half years old. About once every 3 years, I get one which doesn't print. So in 22 and a half years, I think it's something like 7 ultimate targets out of thousands which never printed. So the odds are at some point, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but at some point we're going to undercut that low. In the morning we got an ultimate sell and an ultimate buy in the same pattern. It's pretty much a given you're going to go nowhere by the time the morning's over and stay within these two yellow lines, and that's what happened. The ultimate buy has been satisfied. We've gone high enough. The ultimate sell says we're going to at least undercut this low, and that gives a target, but usually we get more than that, and that's why I think we could well fill today's gap at some point. The afternoon said this was a false move. It wouldn't stick. We'd retrace and go back over that high. It certainly worked, but I'm not going to give myself credit for it because at the time I was in the chat room and said it was a muddled signal because only triggered by 1 cent. With a difference of 1 cent, it would have said this were a sustainable down move and didn't have to retrace. And of course, if that were the signal, it would have worked. But when I call it muddled, I can't take credit for it, even though if you follow the rules strictly, it did work. System now says this rally isn't for keeps. We're going to retrace to 6,074.93. And if we don't gap up smartly, that's my call. Now we have 9 bars of setup from Tom DeMark. You don't have to stop here, but it's a logical place for rallies to stop. It happens often. It doesn't happen every time. Now he has a 9-13 sell signal, which caused a delay, but he also has something called a 9-13-9 sell signal, which says you're even more overextended, and by that system that gives a sell right here. Now it just identifies the area of the top, but often that's the end of it. Well, usually these 9 bars are closer to this bar 13. Usually it's within 3 bars, and this is 3, 6, 8 bars. That's a bit far, but if you measure the height from the TDST line, you get, this is 61.8, and you compare that to these first 9 bars, I mean, it's exactly 100%. So there is a fib relationship between the first 9 bars and the last 9 bars, implying that even though it's a bit late in its origin, it could well be part of the same pattern. And if it is part of the same pattern, it gives a cell signal by his criteria. I'll grant you it doesn't always work, but by his rule, it means you're extremely overbought. Signals don't have to work, but at least there is a signal. We're going to have to wave goodbye to this chart because it was helpful in the fact that we hit the junction point of trend lines and didn't collapse. That told us it wasn't going to work. But I don't know if it's giving us more information now. We'll wave goodbye. Now this chart, we've made a valid break over that line. That's completely over the line, which is what you need to do. You still need to confirm it by going past the close, and if you reverse immediately, it doesn't count. But right now, it's a valid break. There's always a catch. The catch is if you count this wave blue C as A, B, C, which is a valid count, I can count 5 waves up with good fibs. These fibs are perfect. The only fly in the ointment is how to count this wave. Well, that should be wave 5. I don't know where C came from. Only problem is how to count that wave 5. It should be a 5-wave structure. We're going to forget about the colors. Here was the end of that wave 4. We have to count this wave 5 as a 5-wave structure. Well, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if it ends here, the fibs are all great. I mean, you can take the height of waves 1 through 3, and 5 is exactly, well, it was exactly when they measured before. That's right at 78.6. And if you measure wave 5 in black, 1, 2, 3, the height of wave 3 I measured this wrong. That's wave 1. I measured it wrong. So let's try this again. That's wave 3 is 100. That's wave 1 at 61.8. Catch is wave 5 isn't supposed to be a 3-wave structure, it's supposed to be a 5-wave structure. Now that doesn't ruin anything if we drop right from the open and wave black 4, then have a truncated wave 5. I'll grant you it might be a tall order, certainly isn't a given, but if we do drop, hit the targets and fill this gap, and then truncate, it would work. So there is a count that makes it work too. Now, I'm not interested in playing the short side. I think we're going much higher. I'm just saying you can make a case for us dropping first and at least undercutting this low and probably filling the gap before the rally continues. Well, Thursday's pattern has the early low regardless of how we open. Wednesday featured a valid breakout to new all-time highs. All that's needed now is confirmation by trading past the close. That may not be so easy. We have lower MEJT targets, and unless we gap up smartly, the rules call for them to print. Now, December 1st is Caroline's F25, and the 2nd through the 3rd is his F16 from a different pattern. There's a 3-day window, so the highs in one of his possible change in trend periods. Now again, if there's a high, it tends to be one of his periods. If there's one of his periods, doesn't mean it's a high, but at least you're in the range where he looks for a high. Now it's possible to count today as completing a DeMark 913-9 sell signal, and there's also a wave count compatible with the top if, as I said, if we drop right from the open and truncate wave 5. So we have lower targets, and if we do drop, I can explain it without killing the longer-term bull picture. I'm not interested in playing the short side here, but nothing prevents a pullback, possibly filling today's gap before the rally continues. So we need confirmation. I think it'll come, even if it doesn't come tomorrow. But if, and that's an if underline, if it doesn't come tomorrow, we have lower targets. Wouldn't surprise me if we undercut this. Wouldn't surprise me if we fill the gap. I just don't think that's where the money's going to be made. This just isn't a perfect entry point, if you ask me, unless, of course, we gap up and everything I say gets thrown out the window before the open. So it's the pattern with the early low. We have lower targets, but the real important thing is we've set the stage for much higher prices to come, even if we don't see them tomorrow. And that's today's call.